Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. I'm your host, of course, Livia Sarah, and today I am joined by another very special guest, Rosie. Do you want to introduce yourself? Share how you found me? Yeah, whatever you think would be important context for the listener.
Sure. So I'm Rosie, I'm 22. I first found Live about a year ago when I had just come to like a bit of a breaking point in terms of my eating disorder journey and recovery. Like I'd I got diagnosed as autistic at 19, and I was just kind of struggling a bit with that diagnosis and what it meant for me and kind of what it meant for my life going forward, and also what it meant for my family as well.
Yeah.
But I think I should probably start with kind of introducing how my eating disorder kind of manifested, when it kind of started, and
Yeah, take
what.
us back because us autistic people, like that's why I very intentionally said, what context do we need here? Because the full picture is important to us, and I'm genuinely curious too, because I of course worked with you, you in the academy. I know a lot about you, but I don't know everything about you. So I'd love to know more too.
Yeah, so I started like struggling a bit with food and exercise when I was probably around 13 or 14, yeah, 13, 14 years old. And I'm from the UK, so that's like the time in high school where you start choosing what exams, what like subjects you're going to study, and what exams that you're going to take for your GCSEs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always been kind of like good in school, probably. I mean, I don't really like saying this about myself, but like a bit of like a high achiever,
Mm-hmm.
good in school. I was a competitive swimmer. I loved exercise. I'd always had a good relationship with food,
Mm-hmm.
and my family, you know, I was kind of just seen as a normal kind of person.
Yeah.
Um, And then around 13, 14, obviously, like I said, you start to choose the exams. So life pressures kind of
Mm-hmm.
start. And at that time, I was also kind of coming to an end with my swimming.
Yeah.
So that structure that I'd had throughout my whole life,
Yeah.
essentially started swimming when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So that structure that I basically had from very early childhood was starting to just fall apart a bit.
Yep.
And I was like, okay,
I'm literally drowning.
yeah, well, literally, yeah, what do I do now? um,
Yeah.
and at the same time that pressures from exams started to come in, we had a nutritionist come into the swimming club to talk about nutrition for performance. So,
Yeah.
um, how to fuel yourself properly if you want to achieve well in swimming and
Yep.
another exercise. And obviously, being autistic, which I didn't know at the time, I
Yep.
took that advice very literally.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I then started to become like a lot more rigid with food and exercise.
Yeah.
And my mum always kind of describes it as like it was like a switch just flipped in my head. It was very much like black and white thinking from that day
Yeah.
forward. I will not eat this. I have got to eat this if I want to achieve X, Y, and Z. There
Yep.
was kind of no scope for flexibility. It was, no, this is the perfect diet, and I will do X amount of exercise and this diet to be the best at swimming, to be the best in
Yep.
school. Um, And then of course, because I started doing all of them things, my swimming performance initially improved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I was eating better and exercising more and focusing more on school.
Yeah.
So I was then getting that positive praise from coaches, from teachers. So of course in my head, oh well, I'm doing this
Yep.
right. This is the only time I've ever felt like I've been good at something and fitted in.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you kind of repeat, repeat, repeat until it just kind of reached a breaking point and I
Yep.
could just like no longer continue doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming back from school one day in about year nine, which is about 14 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and just like breaking down and saying to my mum, like, oh, this has all been going on. And that
Yeah.
kind of started getting the ball rolling for,
Mm-hmm.
um, going to GPs. And then I
Yeah.
was kind of referred to child services, which in the UK
Cams.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, in the UK is called CAMS. Um, and that was an experience, let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, if I may fill in, like traumatizing, because even like that's why I said it in that way, like, oh, cams, because I don't know why, but like most of my clients, most of the people I work with are all in the UK or like in Ireland, in that stroke of in Ireland, Scotland, or in like England. Um, and it's so interesting to me why that is. And but even when it comes to like the autism eating disorder conversation and like the peace pathway and like all the information around that, like it's all in the UK, which is super fascinating to me. So my mom joked the other day, Livia, maybe you should just go live in the UK because I'm once again moving places because my current living situation is toxic toxic energy from the people that I went from. And when you are a highly sensitive person and you feel every single little thing, that is not good. But yeah, I mean, with just I was laughing internally when you said about the nutrition class and learning because that is practically word for word my story and practically word for word the story of so many autistic people that I speak to. And it just flabbergasts me how, the system, in air quotes, is just so, what's the word I'm looking for? Because I don't want to use blind because that is offensive language, and which I learned from my editor. But doesn't see how harmful their current practices are, even like just in school itself. Like the fact that we are giving nutrition class in this way, not we obviously, but you know what I'm saying, and not seeing how it is affecting students, literally children. Um, and then with CAMS, like every single person I have worked with has is like CAMS failed us. CAMS was an experience. CAMS was traumatic. Like the court orders, the legal stuff that comes into it often. Like, I mean, I have no words.
um, well, yeah, on that nutrition thing that you were saying, I completely agree on how we educate young people about nutrition. Like, I
Mhm.
completely agree. I think, don't get me wrong, it's so important to
Yeah,
educate young people about nutrition,
yeah,
but I think the narrative needs to be changed, like completely reanalyzed of how we go about that.
yep,
So rather than labeling foods as good, bad, you should eat this, you shouldn't eat
right,
that, it definitely needs to be more about, okay, you can eat this,
right. Yeah, I mean, even as
yeah.
you're saying that about the good and the bad, like it all comes back to diet culture and what we as a society have been conditioned to believe, the lies we are sold. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with the whole GLP-1 Ozempic craze going on. Like, I don't even follow that. Like, I'm not even going to discuss any of that on this podcast because I think that would that just it goes kind of beyond the focus of like the autism and eating disorders piece for me at that point. Because I'm like, now it's Ozempic and GLP-1s. In 10 years it'll be something else. 20 years ago it was don't eat egg yolks. Now it's fat, carnivore, keto, blah, no carbs, no bread, processed food. Oh my God, if you have bread, like bread in America, like you can leave it on the counter for a year and it doesn't get moldy. You're putting toxicity into your body. Like there's always something because this is how society, like, I think society at large, that's why I always say the system in air quotes, is trying to, how do I say this? The goal of society is to make us cogs in a wheel, right? And that's why in my book, How to Get Out of Quasi Recovery, like the emphasis of that book is stop being a fucking cog. Go be the unique artist that you already are. And that's, of course, where the fear of failure comes in. That's where the risk comes in of what if I'm not accepted? Because at least when you're a cog, at least when you're following diet culture, at least when playing the whole game with everyone that no one else is even aware is a game because it's become their everyday life, which is eventually like what the eating disorder comes to. Even though, the eating disorder itself, we could just also see it as a giant game that you can just stop playing. It's not easy, but it is simple. And I think, yeah, with the diet culture stuff, that it's not necessarily the school's fault or the education's fault, but it is a societal problem. The way that we see bodies and people and food and yeah, I mean, like even as we're talking, like we could go on for hours just talking about this societal problem.
I
um,
know I can't even remember what I was talking about because my brain is just going like, oh, I need to talk about this.
yeah.
Like, there's so many things that you've just said where I think, oh, like I could go off on a tangent about that, and I could go off on a tangent about that.
Yeah.
But one thing what you said stood out to me in that kind of going back to that cognitive wheel thing
Yeah.
is that when you are so uncertain of the world
Yep.
when you're autistic,
Mm-hmm.
being that in a like cog in a wheel
Yep.
by following the perfect diet, following this exercise routine, that is just keeping you safe.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from my eating disorder. And
Yep.
going back to kind of CAMS, it was very much like put on me that I had body image issues, and
Oh
this
God,
th-
yeah.
this is why I had an eating disorder, and it's for this reason. It's because this happened in your childhood, and it's because this person in your family died, which is just so like untrue. Like, don't get me wrong, those things can. Don't get me wrong, those things can affect you and can affect,
Yeah,
you know, your recovery and things like that. But they are
absolutely.
not the
Yeah.
sole. They are not the sole kind of. I don't like having like a reason for your eating disorder,
Yeah.
because everything that I've learned for you from you, it's that eating disorders are an adaptation. Like,
Yes.
they serve a purpose.
Yep.
So I don't like saying it's because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Um.
Yeah.
So anyway, going back to CAMS, I got a bit better in CAMS, but that's because kind of my parents were more involved, and it was very much I was still a child, so they had parental kind of responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to look after me, and it was follow this meal plan, and it was very much kind of dictated by my parents.
Yep.
So on the outside, physically, I got a bit better,
Yeah.
but on the inside, I was still completely drowning and never felt right, if that
Yep.
makes sense. It just
Oh,
didn't feel.
yeah. I mean,
I mean,
I love that you use the word right because that's the word that I often use, like when talking about the existentialism. It's like I don't feel right, so I must feel wrong. And the eating disorder get the purpose, the protection, the adaptation of the eating disorder is at least I can do something right. and take it to the next level, with our personalities, at least I can be perfect at this. And yeah, yeah. I mean, again, my head is now doing the, oh my God, there are 100 little channels we can go down, but I'm gonna let you finish talking.
Um, so I never kind of like to say, oh, I was traumatized by cams or anything like that. I think I kind of live by I did what I could with the tools that I had, and at the
Yeah,
time that was the right thing, and I thought I was doing the right thing, and my parents thought they were doing the right thing. So I never kind of liked to apportion blame to places.
yeah,
Um, but like I said, I got a bit physically better, but never in my head kind of felt right.
yeah.
So anyway, life carried on. And then it got to kind of A level age, which A levels in the UK is like 16, 17,
Hmm.
18. Um, and that's, of course, like when COVID happened and we went into lockdown. And I was actually okay in lockdown. It's
Hmm.
probably like one of the times that I've probably felt the best because
Yeah,
I was safe. I was at home in my own little bubble. I didn't have to worry about going to sixth form, going to school, and kind of interacting with everybody, eating with different people. I was just kind of in my element at home.
yeah.
But that's kind of when you get in your head, when you're all alone, and
Hmm.
things started to kind of spiral a bit more because I didn't have anything else to obsess over. So the obsession once
Yeah.
more became food and exercise.
Yep.
Um, and then after sixth form, after my A levels, I went to university to study paramedic science because that was all I'd ever wanted to be throughout my
Hmm.
whole life was a paramedic. It
Hmm.
was like you could almost call it a hyper focus. That was all
Uh-huh.
that I'd ever wanted to be. Um, and then of course I went to university and life just completely changed
Hmm.
because I'd gone from spending basically 2 years in the house in lockdown to now this world of you're on your own, like you write assignments on your own, you've got to do the research on your own. And I thought A levels were hard.
Yeah.
I thought I was independent in sixth form. God, was I wrong?
Yeah.
um, so anyway, university, and then as a paramedic, you go out on placement, and I got very unwell very quickly
Hmm.
because it was just complete lack of structure. I mean, certainly as a paramedic, you go to any call at any time in the day, any patient, whatever.
Yeah. I'm like,
Like,
even as you're telling me that, I'm like, for my autistic routineness, I'm like, oh God, what a nightmare.
yeah, and but I still at this stage didn't have my autism diagnosis.
Yeah.
So I couldn't understand why I was finding this so difficult because
Yeah.
from from my perspective, it looked like everybody else on that course was just getting on with it and having a good
Yeah.
time. Um, and I was completely just, I mean, overwhelmed isn't even the word.
Yeah.
I was just at breaking point.
Yeah.
So, of
If I may
course,
interrupt, like even as you're
yeah,
just saying this about like the not knowing you're autistic, and just the way, the moment we were saying it, I felt it in my whole body, like just the utter, not even confusion, again, like not even overwhelm, but just desperation mixed with confusion mixed with existential loneliness, like because you're like, why am I so broken? And what's coming up for me right now is, so all throughout my eating disorder treatment, I didn't know I was autistic, and something that I do say is like, I was able to gaslight myself through treatment because I didn't know I was autistic. Like the way that these therapists and professionals, I like to just call them the medical people at this point, like the way that they treated me, the inhumane things that went down, and me basically saying, oh yeah, you're right, it is the eating disorder talking because I have no other explanation. Like because if I had known that it was sensory sensitivities, demand avoidance, all the things, I don't think I would have been able to let them treat me the way they did. So yeah, so I mean, in that regard, it's like, was that a positive thing or not? But because at the same time, even that, like the not knowing you're autistic in such experiences, like that arguably is a form of trauma, like not obviously intended trauma by anyone, but just if you think about it, like I personally, like I have a really hard time eating in front of other people. I still do. And I do think a lot of the time and wonder, how much of this difficulty was caused by FBT and literally being watched like a hawk every bite for 5 years straight, right? Because I mean, I like to do things privately and by myself, but as a kid, I was never eating like I could eat in front of other people, no problem. So, at that point, it's like how much of this is like just genuine autistic preference, but also like a big portion of I do think is just my nervous system, like eating in front of people. That is not safe because remember the situation you were in last time you had to eat in front of other people. So yeah, kind of a side tangent, but I did just want to throw that in there, like for anyone who has experienced really hard things, which is probably everyone listening to this, not knowing you're autistic, like that you are not alone in that experience, and so many of us have had to go through that. So anyways, yeah, I just wanted to add that.
No, I think what you've just said is completely true. And I sometimes look back and think, I look back on it with, I don't know if grieving is the right word, but I
Yeah.
kind of look back on it and think, I look back at my younger self and think, God, like you were just so, I don't even know the word that I'm looking for. You were
Yeah.
just so,
I mean, this is why, Rosie, this is why I hate words because I like as you're like about to say the word that isn't a word, I like I'm filling in the feeling that you want to put in there. And I'm like, we don't even need a word because even the listener, I'm like, we're filling it in. Like I the word that's almost coming up for me is like the negative nostalgia. Like how when we yearn for something of the past, but it's like the opposite. It's like it's not pity, it's not grief, it's not mercy. It's just like you poor thing. But like that even doesn't even encompass it. So, oh gosh, yeah,
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's hard to even think of a word other than like you poor thing. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I had a bad upbringing or a terrible childhood or anything like that, because that
yeah,
is, the complete opposite. But I
yeah,
just look back and sometimes think, God, if I only knew, if my family only knew, if people around me only knew how much internally was going on, it would
yeah,
have been a completely different story. But you
yeah,
can't change the past. You can only shape the future. So what what we know now is what we know, and what adaptations, what things can I put in place to make my future the best, and what things
right,
can I share with other people who
right,
might be going through the same thing to help them as well, because I would never want anybody to to be going through the same thing. So that's why your platform is so good. It's why I'm so passionate about it, is what can we do for young
yeah,
people coming up that are thinking, oh, am I different? Why am I struggling with this? Why am I interpreting this differently? And it's why, if I kind of go back to my little story, is that paramedic science was a shit show, let's just say. Um, so then I changed my degree to my teaching degree, which is what I'm doing now. And I am so, I mean, passionate's not even the word, just so
yeah,
focused on, I want to help children with special educational needs, autism, ADHD, dyslexia,
Yeah.
any neurodivergence. Like that is my absolute passion, to help those children understand themselves and have a good understanding of the world as well, so that they ultimately don't experience these mental health difficulties that are so much more prevalent in
Yeah.
people who are neurodiverse.
I mean, that's so beautiful that you have like just again, words are not existing for me right now, but I can hear just even like through the words you are speaking, I can feel and just I am fully like embodying and sensing your passion. And that is like that what you have is exactly the same passion I have for, the whole autism eating adaptation connection. Like it is so nuanced, like painfully nuanced. And I'm actually currently writing a book about anorexia and autism. And every chapter, well, not every chapter, but like some of the chapters, I literally have a chapter, the whole chapter is about exactly this, is about words failing me and how writing for me is one of the most painful experiences in existence because nothing I ever say is truly what I want to say. Um, and at the same time, it is a thrill of a lifetime for me. It's like challenge accepted. Every chapter is challenge accepted. And I think that that combination of being just excruciatingly terrified and equally like, I have to do this, like, this is my path. I think that that focus, that clarity, that direction, I think that that is, once we find that for ourselves or once we create that for ourselves, that is when the neurodivergence like channels itself into just unstoppable power. And I mean, with the mental health issues, even I mean issues in air quotes, like being more prevalent among neurodivergent people, I do wonder if that is the cost of being, I'm just going to say it, being a highly gifted person. Because if you look at all the best writers, all the best artists of history, all of them, not even kidding, all of them were fucking suicidal. And I'm like, that's not because they were artists, right? Or because of who they were or the work they did. It was because maybe their art, the fact that they were uh it's not okay, I just kind of messed up my words. It's not that they because they were artists. It's I think that the art itself, being the artist, being a true artist, daring to create, daring to not be a cog in a wheel, like that is the challenge, I guess, of the lifetime. And to actually lean into that and do that and to channel your energy there. For me personally, like if I am not able to be an artist, if I'm not able to create my art, like I have no reason to live. And I don't mean that in like a suicidal way. Like I remember telling my mom that for the first time, and she was like, "That's so depressing." I was like, "No, but I don't mean it like that. I actually mean it in a very positive way. Like I'm so passionate about this. Like this is my reason for living." And I think the neurodivergent being, we cannot live just to live and not have anything to live for, because for us, that's why we can't do small talk, that's why we can't be cogs in a wheel, that's why we can't conform no matter how hard we try, because we are artists. But because the by art definition is painful, because you are creating something from nothing, literally, like you are creating energy almost, like how can you not be struggling with mental health if you're actively seeking out meaning every single second of every single day? I hope, like, I know I went all kinds of directions, but I hope that made some kind of sense.
Yeah, and I think it's not seeing that as a negative. Do you know what I mean? Like some
Yes.
people might like, you I might sometimes look at it kind of depends what state I'm in. I sometimes look at my eating disorder and anxiety and depression and all these kind of labels that I've been given and think and see that as like a negative and think, oh God, well, I've got all of this going on. How can I ever possibly achieve anything with all of this?
Yeah.
But then it's like looking at those things and then going, well, it's perspective, it's how you see those things. You can either choose to see them as a barrier or you can choose to see them as, okay, I don't like to say I've got these things because then it's almost like they're a part of you, like you carry them like a backpack and they're weighing you down. But
Yeah.
I haven't got these things, I'm experienced these things, and it's the kind of strength of character of how am I going to get through these things, and putting the correct adaptations in place to get through those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we need to do a whole other podcast about communication and
Oh, we
adapt.
will. We will. Even as I'm looking at the time, I'm like, you're gonna come back. You're gonna come back. Yeah.
I mean, like a whole other podcast about communication adaptations for neurodivergent people and how they can live, you know,
Yeah.
successful lives. Because, like you said, some of the best artists, writers, you know, entrepreneurs, artists are neurodivergent, and it's
Yeah.
seeing that as your superpower, not something that needs to be dismissed or not
Right.
something that needs to be, knocked down.
Right. And what you're reminding me of is what I love that you said about not seeing it as like a problem or something like bad, because I recently did a podcast episode where I was just going on a walk and I was feeling that, that existential nausea that I was describing, like being confronted with my own consciousness, like feeling those like ADHD, autism, bouncing balls, like clashing against each other. The autism being so burnt out, being so exhausted, being like, all I need right now is to just rest. And my ADHD being like, no, we're bored. We need to write. We need to do this. We need to go on a walk. And and literally being so tired amidst it all that you realize like you are consciousness and there's nowhere to escape, like there's nowhere to run, like that is absolute, like that is arguably the most excruciating form of pain there, because there's no numbing from your own consciousness. And it was so bad a few weeks ago. And I something that, one of my values is integrity and honesty, transparency, sharing what I am struggling with, because I never ever want someone to think like, oh, she's recovered from an eating disorder, her life is amazing and perfect and all that. No, like and of course this depends on your definition of the word suffering, but I like to say every single day for me is suffering. One of my biggest fears is existential emptiness, like is the not having a purpose, is not having anywhere to channel my hyper focus, not having anywhere to channel my energy. Because and that's why I think burnout can be so hard for us ADHD people, is because we literally feel like we cannot exist, like we don't know how to exist in those moments. And that's what I feel when I'm in burnout. And I think with the yeah, so anyways, why I brought up that episode that I did last week about the existential nausea was I got so many messages from people saying like, it really sounds like you're struggling with your mental health, like you should really get some help. Someone said, please remember these are just thoughts, they're not you. And I'm like, what? Like it was like, I know it was well intended, but it was so like not how I experienced it, like almost, if that makes sense. And I feel like, especially with the artists, I mean, I've mentioned him on the podcast before, but Franz Kafka was an existential writer. He was, I mean, of course the diagnoses didn't exist back then, but he was definitely autistic and he definitely had an eating disorder. So I have like highlighted so many things in his diaries that I'm reading, but some of the stuff he writes, I'm like, I could have written like this. I did not know this was like something that could be felt. Like, I actually have to read something to you now, because it was so. it was so profound to me. Because this is exactly what I say about artists and how art isn't about, feeling happy and painting beautiful pictures, but it's about turning your messes into your messages. Like even for me personally, like some of my best ideas have come from my darkest moments. Like all of my books are literally the definition of my darkest moments being turned into something powerful. And yeah, I'm also writing a fiction novel at the moment, and I literally the whole world I have built in this fiction novel, that entire world was a world I built in my head to escape the excruciating pain of feeling trapped in a human body. And now I'm like, this fiction novel is gonna be so good. And I'm like, I never would have thought of it if I was happy and perfect and didn't quote unquote struggle with my mental health. So anyways, I found the Kafka quote. I'm just gonna read it because it's so good. Well, I might have to read too. Um, so okay, the first thing that he writes is, I don't believe people I don't believe people exist whose inner plight resembles mine. Still, it is possible for me to imagine such people, but that the secret raven forever flaps about their heads as it does about mine. Even to imagine that is impossible. And just reading that, I was like, the secret raven that flaps about your head, and like it being so painfully prominent that you can't even imagine other people are feeling that too. That's a why like I was like, I'm gonna highlight the shit out of this. And then the other quote is anyone who cannot come to terms with his life when he is alive needs one hand to ward off a little of his despair. Um Although he has little success in this, but with his other hand, he can note down what he sees among the ruins, for he sees different and more things than do the others. After all, dead as he is in his own lifetime, he is the real survivor. And again, I love that. It was something that I was actually talking about on a recent existential autistic membership call where one of the members who is in Ireland, by the way, she said, that us neurodivergent people with all our mental health struggles and issues and things, like the fact that we're still alive, like we are the true survivors here. So anyways, I don't even know what we were talking about, but somehow we ended up here.
I know. The conversation always just flows, to be honest, and I'm talking to you, we could literally probably talk for hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing that really came up for me then when you were speaking about all of that was in how to get out of quasi recovery is you have to just create something that's worth suffering for. I
Yeah.
think social media is so bad for portraying this picture of, oh, when you are recovered, your life will look like sunshine and rainbows and puppies and it'll all be great. Like, no, it
Yeah.
won't. Like,
No. No,
we
it
need
won't.
to get we need to get out of that, in that, you know, even when you're recovered,
Yeah.
whatever that means for you,
Yeah.
um, there's still going to be things that,
Yeah.
shit will still hit the fan. Like,
Yeah, and on that, arguably, like even just for me personally, I have more challenges in my life now than I did during my eating disorder. But the difference now is that these are actual challenges. They're actual challenges that make the life worth suffering for. Because when you have an eating disorder, yeah, you're struggling, but the struggle is about food and exercise and your weight and stuff that isn't actually about anything. But
yeah, I
now,
was gonna say,
right,
I completely agree that you have more to worry about now,
yep,
that, because you've got, jobs, I don't know,
relationships, taxes,
relationships. Yeah,
money. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you've got all of those things to worry about, because the only things that you were worrying about when you were ill was food and exercise. Like,
yes.
that's that's why the eating disorder, that's why anorexia, I believe, keeps you, you know,
Yep.
keeps you
Protected.
stuck. Yeah,
Yep.
keeps you protected, keeps you stuck in that cycle, because at least I haven't got to worry about, relationships, bills, taxes, jobs, the
Yeah.
car breaking down, all of that kind of thing, because all I have to worry about is how am I going to get through my day? How am I going to stick to my exercise routines? How am I going
Yeah.
to, what am I going to eat? How am I going to be secretive about what I'm eating?
Right.
Like, that's
Yeah.
all you have to worry about. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not life.
I love that we're talking about this also because it's so validating for me and the things that I choose to write and talk about because in my nonfiction book, I'm writing about the whole suffering after an eating disorder, existential suffering after an eating disorder, and saying like I think it's really important we're gonna be freaking honest about this, that like every day is really challenging for me as a human being. And I often almost feel not guilty, but like hesitant about whether I should be that honest because I'm like, I don't want to discourage people from recovery or whatever. But at the same time, it's like it goes against my entire sense of self and the artist that I am and my values if I am to paint this picture of recovery is worth, of course, recovery is worth it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to pretend that like my life is easier now that I don't have an eating disorder. It is harder. It is harder in so many ways. But at the same time, like it, what's coming to my mind right now is, how, well, not but in my head, I often say when I listen back to podcast episodes, I'm like the amount of times I say that's like my filler word. Um, but anyways, there's this book called Flow by Csikszentmihalyi. It's this interesting, complicated name, but he has this graph in his book, and on the x-axis, it is skill, and on the y-axis, it is challenge, like level of difficulty. And then there's this like curve on it that like your zone of genius, like when you feel like in flow, your the level your level of skill matches the level of challenge. But when your level of skill is like low on the x-axis, but your level of challenge is really high, that's when we get anxious because the skill doesn't match the challenge. But if your level of skill is like really far along and your level of challenge really low, that's when we get bored because our level of skill doesn't match the level of challenge. And the reason why this is coming up is because yeah, the challenges I face, like compared to when I had an eating disorder, are much higher. There are much higher stakes now, in all aspects of my life. But the level of skill that I have built over, overcoming an eating disorder, starting my own business, moving, just all the things that come with lived experience, that calibration is constantly happening, and that's where the trust in the discovery journey comes in, is like trusting that through the challenges your body, your being is constantly trying to match the level of skill you have. So if you're not constantly putting the challenge higher, you're gonna become fucking bored
Yeah.
because yeah, anyways, I hope that made any sense.
No, and I think it works. I think it works both ways as well. Like if you're in anorexia and you're not being challenged, you're
Yes.
you're not you're not challenging yourself with eating less, exercising more. You become bored, so then you become, you eat even less, you exercise even more. So
Oh
it
my
works
god.
both ways. Um, but like you said, those challenges may be getting harder, but your level of skill is going up, and
Yeah.
that that's what life's about. Like
Yeah.
learning, constantly learning, and it's not going to go perfect. And I think that's where, as neurodivergent individuals, we sometimes struggle because we want everything to go perfect. But
Hmm.
coming back to how to get out of quasi recovery, and that lovely, I'm going to get her name wrong, Julia,
Julia
you know her name,
Cameron. Yeah.
Julia Cameron, is that perfectionism is, you
Not a
know,
quest for the best.
it's not a quest for the best, it's a pursuit of the
Pursuit of
worst
the
in
worst.
ourselves.
Yeah. yeah, the confirmation we seek, like that we should try again. Yeah, and I love that quote. And my favorite example is, when we go back to check something, to check that it's perfect, what are we doing? We're actively looking for the mistake. So it's like you're not trying to make it perfect, you're looking for proof that you're a failure. So it's like,
Yeah,
which is literally the opposite of perfect. And that's why that I speaking of graphs, I have that graph in the quasi recovery book in the chapter good enough, about how good enough, perfect, it's this asymptotic line of like it literally does not exist, but you sell yourself this like ultimatum of, if I just hit the line, I'll be there. But when you zoom out, what are we actually saying is like let me race to my deathbed, because then I'm finally there, then I'm finally at the end, then I finally made it. It's like, anyways, maybe that's why, anorexia is a slow suicide in a way, because we're trying to
yeah.
to make it to the end. But yeah, what is the point of life? Speaking of existential questions, what is the point of life if you only focused on the fucking end all the time?
That's a deep question for a Wednesday, I've got to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other day, I even wrote in my journal, what if the whole point is that there is no point? And I was like, that's something to think about today on a 6 a.m. morning where you can't sleep because of the thoughts. But yeah, I mean, these are the questions that I know we are all asking, us neurodivergent people. And some people may say that, oh, why are you being so dramatic? Stop struggling with your mental health. But I'm like, well, where's your art? Honestly. The amount of people that the negative reviewers that have said things about my book, and that I should have written it like this. And one person even said about my memoir, Livia shared too much of her personal story. I'm like, it's literally a fucking memoir. Like, and I'm like, where's your book about anorexia and autism? Where's your book? And this is again why social media and just like looking at other people and the like external validation is so toxic, and you will never be free as long as you base your uh artistry, so to say, on that. Because the truth is, people are gonna think your stuff is bullshit no matter what you do, right? And that's for me, like the reason I do this work. I know the reason that you do your work. It's you don't do it for the people who are going to be cynical and critical and say, this sucks, I can do a better job. You do it for the people that are willing to listen to you. And once you find those people, oh, well, that just makes like life worth suffering for to a whole new level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like what I'm just gonna, I know I'm conscious of time. The one thing that I'm going to say about that is, like if being cynical is working for you, keep being cynical. You do you. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, what I can say about that is, if there are people saying negative things about how to get out of quasi recovery, they haven't read the book. Because I don't I don't read. I don't I, like cognitively, like my focus, my attention. I find it really, really difficult to read a book.
Yeah.
But I read that book in like less than a day, and honest, the amount of highlight I have got in that book is just ridiculous, because the things that it made me do. I mean, the one massive takeaway that I took from that book was, what is your why? Like, I
Yeah.
literally, I mean, it says in the book, put the book down. I actually put the book down
You
and got,
actually did it.
yeah, I got a piece of paper, and wrote down, what do I want? Because I felt like for so long I've just kind of just been going through the motions of
Yeah.
recovery, and what is recovery, and where do I want to be, and what does recovery look like for me? And these questions go over and over in my head all
Yeah.
of the time. And I actually just sat down on that day that I read that book, and I wrote down, what do I want? And I was like, right, okay, this is what I want. So I'm gonna work for that. Like, it
Yeah.
made it really cleared things up in my head about what I want to do with my career, what I want to do, things like that, and what am I passionate about. So that's all I can say on that. If you want to be cynical about it, be cynical about it, because you do you. But
Yeah.
this How to Get Out of Quasi Recovery is an amazing book, and I think, you know, people going through an eating disorder should read it. Parents of people that are struggling with an eating disorder need to read it. Even if you don't have anybody in your life that's affected by an eating disorder, read it, because, chances are in your life you are going to come across somebody who is autistic, who has ADHD, who has an eating disorder, and this, like, it could help them. So,
Rosie, I mean, this is again, I'm like, I wish that you could just feel my soul right now because I'm like, thank you and honor and gratitude doesn't even begin to encompass what I feel having you say those words. And I think this is why so often, autistic people can come across as like emotionless and cold and all the things. It's because we feel so much that it's like I'm not even going to try to put it into words because that would do be a disservice to what I feel. So I mean that's just how I'm going to react to that. But thank you very much. I mean again, no words. So the conclusion of this episode, buy my book, everyone. I don't even have to insert an advert now because you were there for me. No, I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, I mean that really, this is, even just hearing you say that, this is what made writing that entire book worth suffering for, because it was not an easy write, and at the same time, it it literally spilled from my soul. Like I did not write that book with my mind. Like I know that sounds weird, but if I would have thought too much about what am I going to write, I would have never done it. And that's the same thing about discovery and why I prefer that term discovery over recovery. Because the thing about recovery, it's a made up construct. Like it's mental, right? Is you need to challenge the thoughts, you need to overcome the fears, you need to rewire your brain, you need to take opposite action. It's so like overly cognitive almost that it will mentally paralyze you, and that's why people get stuck in quasi recovery, because they're trying to find the map for a journey that has no map. I mean, like again, I can just basically just re dictate the entire audiobook right now because I mean this is like, and I love that you said that about like even if you are not autistic, even if you don't know anyone with an eating disorder, um, one of the mothers that is in my membership, her daughter has an eating disorder, but she said she read the book, and she's also in the UK, by the way. She said she read the book 3 times, first for her daughter, then for herself, and then for like all of humanity or something like that. Because the entire book, and that's why I was so grateful that you took that out of it and she took that out of it, I'm sure, is that the book isn't even about how to get out of quasi recovery. It's how to live a meaningful life. And this is again why when I work with people, when I worked with you, when I work with anyone, we don't even work on getting out of the eating disorder or recovering. We focus on creating a meaningful life, because if you are not able to do that, or if you don't want to do that, well then you can never recover, because why recover then if the whole point of being recovered if you aren't willing to confront that. Yeah, so I mean Rosie, you're gonna come back, we because the whole list of notes, we of course didn't even do point number one.
and we didn't even talk about what we were supposed to talk about, but
But that's
that's just us in a nutshell. Like, we could start talking and would probably be there 100 years later. Like,
I remember this was the first time that you had said it, and ever since you had said it, like this phrase just keeps going around in my mind. I remember it was maybe a fifth session or something like that, and you said, um, Liv, like, I often think about like what would happen if you like put two neurodivergent people in a room together, and that's basically what we're doing. And because it's so true, and that's why I love this connection so much, and even this entire conversation is a work of art, like art, like, and connection, which are basically the same thing. Like that is, in my soul's belief, like that is the point of it all, is art, is connection. um and yeah, and maybe, and I mean, whoever's listening to this, like, interpret that however you want to interpret that. But I think, my big question for the listener is yeah, like, the what do you want, and what does art and connection and contribution mean to you? That's a really hard question, but I think, the real meaningful questions are not the easy ones. um so all that being said, Rosie, is there, if there's one thing, that the listeners, no, not one thing, but like a main theme or idea or some phrase that you'd like to, leave the listeners with, so they can noodle on that, but between now and the time when you are back on the podcast, what would that be?
Um, well, initially my big message was kind of something that we were supposed to talk about, but um, I'd say probably my big takeaway, like from this episode, and probably one thing that I can kind of leave with people is that it's about creating something. Like you just summed it up there. It's about creating something what is meaningful to you. Don't
Yeah,
worry about having a map. Don't worry about
yeah,
having sort of an end destination. Like, don't get me wrong, have goals along the way, set yourself little targets, but it's not the be all and end all. And again, I'm going to come back to that Julia Cameron
yes,
quote, is that like perfectionism is a pursuit in the worst of yourself. And
yeah,
don't get me wrong, that is something I still struggle with sometimes, in that everybody wants to be good, everybody wants to be the best at things, but if you're constantly knocking yourself down because you haven't done it perfectly, then life's not going to be great. Because, the thing that I always say is life is going to be there to slap you across the face anyway. So
yeah.
just don't do it to yourself.
Don't do it to yourself. Yes, I love that. And you have, I mean, I may regret saying this, but I think you've given me the name of this episode, which is Creating a Life Worth Suffering For. I mean, I think that just beautifully encompasses everything we've spoken about. And yeah, I'm so excited to have you back. So once I hit stop recording, we can talk about scheduling that. Um, thank you, Rosie, for your energy and your vibration. It's truly, I mean, again, the XXX placeholder word for speaking to you. You
Yeah.
can interpret that however, yeah, it's actually kind of hilarious. I say XXX because when I write my first draft, when I write my manuscript, my thoughts are going so fast that I cannot be bothered by trying to find the correct words. The amount of, like, if I have a page, the amount of, like, uh so tomorrow you will XXX, and then it will just continue the sentence because I'm like, I'll come back to the exact word later when I have my thesaurus, and I look up the synonyms. And then you have all the tabs open for synonyms for this and that because you can't be redundant. So that is a whole sequence of things that goes into writing. But anyways, I never know how to wrap up, so I'm just gonna hit stop recording right now. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, my friend. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could leave a positive rating and review for the Live Label Free podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's a free way to show your support so I can continue bringing you the valuable content that I love to create for you.